Hey guys, I hope you guys had a wonderful Valentine's last week. I am going to be combining two different things into one for this week because we weren't doing a lesson last week. So, this week is about conflict, pressure, and transformation. Now, we're going to talk about something that is very important in stories, but it can also feel a little uncomfortable at first. But it's actually where all the real magic begins. If you see me looking back here, I've made notes so that way I don't forget or get lost on a tangent. So you'll see me looking back here at my notes. Now, so we're talking about why something has to go wrong, right? And even more importantly, why the story must change the person inside of it. Now, the great big truth that good storytellers know is that stories are not solely built on comfort. Yes, we want the comforting, cozy things that make it relational, right? We can relate to getting up, going to work, going to school, eating breakfast in a cozy breakfast spot. Maybe it's tea or hot chocolate or Christmas time or whatever it is, something that we can relate to. We love all the comforts of relatability, being able to relate, right? And also just maybe it's the fun parts of a story that make it comforting, like being able to escape into a whole nother world. We love all that. But it can't be built solely on comfort, right? That can only last so long. Stories are built on pressure. Okay, so in part one of today's lesson, why stories need conflict. Now, we're going to start with a simple question. Why do stories need conflict? Why can't a story just be everyone's happy, everything is easy, and nothing's really going wrong, breezy, blasé, ooh, that's nice, that's great. And it is comforting to kind of live in another world with someone else and, just kind of be somewhere else. But here's the problem, like nothing's moving. So that's our issue here. Nothing changes. So there's no story and there's nothing to really follow, right? Nothing to remember or to be like, oh my gosh, we're building relationship with the character and the story. There's none of that there. It was just relating to maybe everyday stuff. And that's beautiful. But like I said, it only lasts a while. So that's not considered a real story. Now, the conflict is pressure. Now, in Storycraft, we use a very important word that I've said a couple times now, conflict. But conflict does not just mean what we first think of when we hear that word, fighting, right? It does not just mean arguments or villains. At its core, conflict is pressure. It's the force that pushes on the character. It's the resistance that makes something hard. It's the moment when the easy path disappears and you're like, oh no, what do I do now? What's about to happen, right? So the natural world, which we've talked about, teaches us, if we look closely, that it's had this pattern all along. Pressure creates diamonds, right? Tension or resistance builds muscles. Storms reshape the land, right? Hurricane or volcano, those type of things, they line the path and the framework for what's to come after. So nothing, alive, nothing lasting, strong, develops without resistance. Stories follow that same law. So the building blocks of pressure. When we talk about conflict in stories, there are 4 key pieces that work together. Conflict, the problem or force pushing against the character. The stakes, which you guys I'm sure have heard of. What are the stakes, right? What could we lose or what could be lost if things go wrong? Tension, this is the feeling of what's going to happen next, right? And opposition, okay? Now that's what stands in the character's way. And opposition can actually come from 2 different places. It can come from external things like a storm, a villain, a locked door, right? Sometimes it's internal, okay? So fears, doubts, a false belief, okay? Part of the character that isn't quite ready to grow yet. Maybe they are their own blockage where they're not able to move forward. It's in themselves. And sometimes in really good stories, you have a combination of a lot of those things, or you have one really strong one. Like maybe they had this belief about their world or whatever, their family or their friendship or something that's to come. Maybe they got into a marvelous school they've always wanted to be in, and now, the stakes have changed if they don't pass a certain test to get in there. Or, we've got somebody they're fighting a villain and they know that they have to do this to get the key to succeed over the villain, but the door is locked and they have to make a decision about a friendship to get to that door and that key. There could be multiple layers, and those are fun to follow, right? Now, what conflict really does for us, and it's one of the most important things to understand, is that conflict is not just pure chaos, right? Conflict is the shaping force, and pressure reveals character. Pressure shows us who someone really is, okay? By the end of it, at least, it shows us more about them. And without tension, nothing grows. So at the end of our part 1 here is that stories need pressure because growth needs resistance. So let's get into part 2. Why stories must change the person. So we're going to move into an even deeper question here, because conflict alone is not enough. It's why does a good story always change its character? Because it can't just be a series of exciting events on their own. It can't just be the dragons, the storms, the adventures, the close calls. It would be great if that was enough, sure, and we could definitely get lost in a good world or two, for sure. But like I said, that only lasts so long. It's not quite enough on its own. Okay? Because the true heart of story is not just what happens, it's who someone becomes, right? And let's talk a little bit about why. So we've talked about, in your writing paths, the layers of writing. So I like to think of writing, when I'm writing, as a body of work. And inside of a body, we have the bones. We have the skeleton, right? And that's what I like to think of as the story arc, as we talked about the other week, where it kind of shows just those pinpoints of the major parts of the body. This is from here to here to here. Okay, this is how they connect. Then you have the meat, right? The muscles, the tendons, the veins, right? Everything that makes that skeleton come alive. And it's what makes it move, right? How it moves. You fill in the meat. How does the character get from this pinpoint